All right, so here we got a much longer problem because we've got three inequalities that we have to deal with. And so that means we have to have three slack variables, which means our table is going to get a lot bigger. So let's start with this. We have our kind of our initial problem set up, maximize this subject to these constraints. So now we have to consider what we have to do here. We have to make this into x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus s1 equals 11. Then we have to have 2x1 plus 3x2 plus x3 plus s2 equals 20. And we have x1 plus 3x2 plus 2x3 plus s3 equals 20. Then we take everything to the other side. So we have a minus 4x1 minus 2x2 minus 3x3 plus p equals 0, and x1, x2, and x3 greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so that now is, oh, and then we also have to have our, we forgot to put S1, S2, and S3 also greater than or equal to 0 because those are part of the thing. So that would be kind of a key here. And I might have forgot to write that on the last problem, but that's, you always have to put your S's have to be greater than or equal to 0 as well. All right, so with that said, now we have to make our initial tableau. So hopefully we'll have room to make two of them, top and bottom, but that's beside the point if we can't. So x1, x2, x3, s1, s2, s3, p, and then we have that. And now we have over here s1, s2, s3, and p. All right, so probably not going to get two in a row, but that's okay. Now we just write our constants here. So we have what? A 1, a 1, a 1, a 1, a 0, 0, 0, and 11. Then we have a 2, a 3, a 1, a 0, a 1, a 0, a 0, and a 20. And then we have what? A 1, a 3, a 2, a 0, a 0, a 1, a 0, and another 20. Then a minus 4, a minus 2, minus 3, 0, 0, 0, 1, and 0. All right, so at least we can get it set up here. And now we look for the biggest negative down on the bottom. So that happens to be this one. And now we need to do our quotients to figure out which one we circle. So we're going to have 11 divided by 1, that's 11. Here we're going to have 20 divided by 2, and that's going to be 10. And here we're going to have 20 divided by 1, which is 20. So it looks like the smallest is going to be this one. So that means over here, we're going to circle that. Okay. And when we do this, this time maybe what we'll do is we'll do all of them in one go. We're going to take 1/2 row 2 and make that row 2. And then we're also going to take a minus 1/2 row 2 plus row 1, and that's going to be our new row 1, and a minus 1/2 row 2 plus row 3, and that's going to be our new row 3. And if we take 2 times row 2 plus row 4, that can be our new row 4, because if we take 2 times that plus that, that will go to 0. So I think we'll have 4 things we can do at one time. Now, again, if you want to do less at once, you can do less at once, but I'm going to try to optimize this because otherwise it's going to take a lot to get it all done. So this one is entering, this one is exiting, and so I have to go S1, X1, S3. So that's going to be my next page. And so we have, where's my writing? All right, here we go. We're going to have S1, X1, S3, and then we have a P, and this is X1, X2, X3, S1, S2, S3, P, and we have a line, and we have a dotted line of some sorts. And so when we do all the minus half of that row, so we're going to take minus half of that plus that's 0, minus half of that plus that, and that's going to give us a minus half. And so we're just going to have to fill in the table as we go. So that becomes a 0, and then that was a minus a half. That becomes a half. That one became a 1, a minus a half, 0, 0, and that becomes 1. And then we divide that row by 2, we get 1, we get 3 halves, we get 1 half, we get 0, we get 1 half, and then we had 0, 0, and then 20 divided by 2 is 10. Then minus half, so we take basically minus that plus that row, so that gives us a 0, and a 3 halves, and a 3 halves, and a 0, and a minus 1 half. And that was a 1, and then 0, and minus that plus that, so that gives us a 10. And minus, or 2 times that row plus that row, that gave us a 0, and then a 4, and then a minus 1, and then a 0, and then a 2, a 0, a 1, and then that becomes 40. Okay, so that's our new table. And now we look for, in that bottom row, we look for the largest negative, which happens to be this. So now we're going to do our quotients again. And when we do that, we're going to take 1 divided by, and now we have a half. And so that gives us a 2. And then we're going to take 10 divided by a half. And that's going to give us 20, so that's pretty big, so that's not going to work. And then 10 divided by 3 halves, so that's going to be 20 divided by 3. And so that's still bigger, so that happens to be the smallest. And so that means this is going to be our pivot point. So this is going to enter, and this one's going to exit. So x3 is going to come here, then we'll have x1, then s3. Okay. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, I think if we do this, we have a lot of fractions here. So let's just take, in this case, 2 times row 1 and make that the new row 1. That'll make that a 1. Then if we take a minus row 1 plus row 2, make that the new row 2, that'll make that a 0. And if we take a minus 3 times this plus that, so a minus 3 row 1 plus row 3, that's going to be our new row 3. And if we take 2 times this row plus that row, that should give us what we need there. So 2 times row 1 plus row 4, that's my new row 4. Okay, so that looks good so far. All right, so when we do that, we have, now that's going to be x3, x1, s3, p, and all right, so now our x1s, we're just going to keep all that stuff the same up there. And so when we do that, it looks like what we're going to have to do is take 2 times that first row. So that's that gives us 0, a minus 1, a 1, a 2, a minus 1, a 0, a 0. Maybe we need to take that up a little bit more, and a 2. Then minus that plus that, so that's going to give us a 1. Minus that plus that is going to give us, oh, it looks like 2. And then that's going to be 0, a minus 1, 1, 0, 0, and then 9. Now we're taking 3 times, minus 3 times that row plus that row, so that's going to give us what, 0, 3. That better be a 0 because that's what we're trying to get to. That's going to be a minus 3, a 1, a 1, a 0, and then that's going to be just a 7. And then take 2 times this row plus that row, so that's going to give us what? A 0, a 3, a 0, a 2, a 1, a 0, a 1, and 42. All right, so now we look at the bottom row. There's no negatives, so now we stop. All right. Now in this case, these are going to be our values. X1 and X3 and S3 are going to be 0. So we're going to then we have S1, S2, and X2 equals 0 because those are going to be the ones up here. So if we let those be 0, then what we end up with is X3 is equal to a 2, X1 is equal to a 9, S3 is equal to the 7, and our max, what the heck is that? Our max P is equal to a 42 from right down here. Okay. And so those are going to be all the values that we need for this solution. Okay. All right, so that one's finished. Again, this is probably one of the longer ones, because if we did this in each step, that would have taken four things. That would have taken another four, so it'd have been 8 lines, we would have had to do, but I was doing four per thing, so that cut it down on what we had to do. But again, that's going to be our final answer. All right, let's stop there and we'll come back for some more.